19th to order.
University of Santa Clara has one on the campus.
First item of business will be public comment. If there's any member of the public who wishes to address the commission, seeing none. The next item of business will be the approval of minutes for July 22nd. Oh, thank you. Are there any comments or revisions? Oh, Ms. Murray? I was moving too fast.
Yeah. Page 6 in the motion, I think under D, where it said there should be more of a sense of openness so that the Arlington Theater does not feel crowded. I just want to add, I have one comment, and that you can board it as one commissioner, is concerned about the density of the project and the sort of the...
Is your mic on?
Sorry. Okay, so I think under there, near there, you can just add that one commissioner, which is me.
Page 6?
Yeah, page 6, under the motion, under density and D. D as in dog. Yeah. Yeah, I guess I was concerned about the row of those three stories right near the Arlington, their height, their size, bulk and scale, and whether they are going to be able to leave the Arlington Theater, have the open feeling. So some wording to that effect.
And so for
Yeah, I think if it
Item
goes
2,
near there, it's okay.
the comment under item comment 2 density in the motion,
Yeah.
D. So at the beginning of the comment, I'm going to say at least two
No,
commissioners.
that sentence there is fine. I think that's very good sentence. So right after that sentence, I
So after
think
that one, I can say at least two commissioners were concerned
One,
about
yeah.
the density of the project in that area.
no, the three buildings that are 3 stories right near the Arlington.
Of the 3-story buildings near the Arlington.
Yeah, I'm concerned about their height, size, bulk, and scale. The proposed, yeah, right, something like that.
Thank you.
And let's see. I think that was the only one I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I do
Yes.
have, on page 8, at the top of the page, under the motion for the 125 State Street, item 6 says, provide structural clarity and dig deeper to make sure it's compatible with the city and the neighborhood to interpret the Spanish Mediterranean style architecture. I'm sure that listening to the tape that that's what we
Yes.
said, but I'm not so sure what it means.
It meant think harder is what it meant, but you need to come up with a descriptive term. You wanted them to,
I think Fermina was talking about the fact that it wasn't compatible with the guidelines, I believe. You had a set of guidelines with you, right, Fermina?
Yeah, but I think it was Louise who had mentioned that yeah.
Alex, that there was something related to the structure being carried through.
Alex?
I have a problem with comment number 3. The size, bulk, and scale are supportable. That is the biggest decision we make. And I understood that the applicant was going to come back with a model and more information, and we were going to decide if that was supportable or not.
Yeah,
this is not a small issue. This is the whole key. I mean, if this comment goes through, then basically our review it's framed within a certain framework. So I like to change that, but I don't want to change the motion. So I want to make sure that the minutes reflect that. In my mind, that's what the motion meant. That we were waiting for further clarification in terms of a model, a 3D model, and a physical model, and some sketches and so forth, to clarify to us as whether the project was acceptable in terms of mass, bulk, and scale.
so you're meaning item number 3, the size, bulk, and scale are supportable. You think that shouldn't have been in there?
I don't think that's what we...
Okay, I'm going to have to go get my... I'm going to go get my handwritten notes, and I'll be right back. On the other item, the item 6, how about if you just say provide structural clarity to make sure it is compatible with the city and the neighborhood?
Well, how about striking structural, because it's just general
Well,
clarity?
I'm going to go get my notes.
I just remember that,
you can make sure it's compatible with the city and the neighborhood, because it is.
Alex, maybe you can comment. It was your
Yeah,
comment.
you were
or-
talking about
That got to do with
the gaudy and
thickness of the walls.
Yeah, that it was proposed as a building, a masonry building with thick walls, and the building we like to see. On the other hand, they had some other elements that were very impossible to support, like a very huge span with glass and a canopy and so forth. And the plans did not reflect the elevations. The plans show all thin walls. The elevations show very thick walls, like several feet thick. And in the plans, they show us a 6-inch wall. That's what I think that's what it means. Those two different areas.
It didn't conform with our recently approved by the city council guidelines.
Well, that would be another item.
So would you say that it was provide structural clarity in a compatible manner with the Spanish Mediterranean style architecture?
Yeah.
Okay. And the EPV guidelines. Did you get that, Gabrielle? Yeah.
So item 6, provide structural clarity in a compatible manner.
With the Spanish Mediterranean style of architecture and with the architectural guidelines. With the EPV guidelines, I'm sorry.
As to comment 3 in the motion, Madam Chair, that was a comment that you made during the summary.
Yes, and I remember that, and my memory was I was actually sort of a little surprised how many people said that the size, bulk, and scale was supportable, so that's why I included it in my summary.
Well, I don't think I do.
So we could say that some commissioners feel, if my memory was, several people said that.
I recollect the same thing.
Yes.
I got the impression that you were leaning in that direction as a commissioner.
Yes, that's so we can modify this, and it would be the truth that some commissioners feel the size, bulk, and scale are supportable. Okay.
Didn't we have anything in
But I think we did ask for the additional information.
Absolutely. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, and that's number 9. Yes.
Clarity needed.
Right.
And back to my original question, the dig deeper
Yes.
is very
Yes.
benign, and I
Exact words.
Yes, that was me, probably.
I have two commissioners who commented on the size, bulk, and scale, Schallenberger and Peugeot. So Mr. Schallenberger's comment was, let's see, actually says height and massing supportable in general. And then Commissioner Peugeot was mass, bulk, and scale was fine.
Yep.
Well, I said that it could be very good or very bad, but it was going to be very expensive regardless. I think I made that
You
comment.
did. You
Yeah.
said it was expensive. Yeah.
May I
That's what it's on here.
question? I don't see anything in here about its relationship to a structure that's in the National Register.
I think it's 9, number 9.
Is that in there?
Yeah.
No. Well, that's just in relation to its surroundings, but oh, my mind is on that. It just seems to me that one of the most important things about this whole thing is its relationship to the two structures, which are city landmarks. California landmarks are in the National Register of Historic Places, and I don't see that. Did we not put that in the motion?
I don't believe that comment was made.
Madam Chair, if it's okay being action by Peugeot and Boucher, perhaps we should have number 9 at the very top. That would be the first number 1 item.
That would help.
And then we make the other comments. Because it just seems like we start talking with details about the drop of space at the rear of the building. We start, and then we talk about the more important items at the end, and it's a little bit awkward.
That's prioritization in that manner is fine with me.
Yeah, I have a correction. On page 6, under the comments for 34 West Victoria project, if we go down into the motion toward the bottom, and item 5 is landscaping, there's a sentence that reads, it was suggested that Canary Island date palms be incorporated in the key spots as a framing device to contrast the beauty of the Arlington. That should read as a framing device to relate to the beauty of the Arlington. To relate to the beauty of the Arlington, not contrast.
Are there any further comments or suggestions, corrections, revisions? Seeing no, those, all those in favor of approving the minutes as amended? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? That motion carries. Commissioner Drury abstains. Next item of business is the consent calendar.
Yes, Madam Chair. Item A, 2300 Garden Street was final approval with the condition that with the conditions. Item B, 2300 Garden Street was final approval with a condition. Item C, 2300 Garden Street was final approval with a condition. Item D, 21 East Victoria Street was final approval as submitted. Item E, 536 State Street was postponed 2 weeks to September 2nd. Item F, 834 State Street was final approval as submitted. Those were reviewed by Commissioner Sharp, except item F, which was reviewed by Chair Naylor.
And on the minutes, it says ratify the consent calendar both August 5th and August 12th. Is that what we need to make a motion for that?
Yeah.
See, in my announcements, actually, we were clarifying today's full board agenda under general business. Item C, consent calendar minutes to be ratified are those of August 5th and 19th, rather than the 5th and the 12th. So yes,
I see.
5th and the 19th.
Okay. May I have a motion to ratify the consent calendar?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, two different motions for each of them? Yes.
And then one for the staff.
Okay.
Okay.
May I have a motion to ratify the consent calendar for August 5th?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I will step down from the item on the Arlington Plaza.
From what day?
On the 5th.
Abstain? Commissioner Drury? That motion carries. May I have a motion to ratify the consent calendar of August 19th?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? That motion carries. Next item of business is announcements.
Item number 6 at 914 Chapala Street will need a final approval of revised landscape plan and not approval of a review after final as it is stated in the agenda. And item 4 on today's agenda, the Historic Structures Report for 540 West Pueblo, as I had emailed to you, that will be postponed 2 weeks at the applicant's request, so if you could please hang on to those reports. I will be sending to you some revised pages to read in the packets the next time.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you. Yes.
I'll just step down from items 1 and 2, and would be 4, but it's postponed.
Thank you.
To leave by 4, which is
Oh.
past the end of the agenda. Just
I
in
will
case.
move it. Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I survived Wisconsin, and it was a wonderful time, but I'm very glad I live in Santa Barbara.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Any other announcements?
To thank Robert and Nancy
Yes.
for their hospitality last Sunday evening. It was a lovely evening, and it couldn't have been a nicer place, and the weather was perfect, and everything was lovely, and we appreciate your home and your garden. Thank you.
All I got to say is sorry if anybody missed it. So.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I don't really know where this fits in the agenda, so I'm going to put it
Okay.
under announcements.
All right.
You could put this up to the TV to pick up on there.
Okay.
We've got 3 minutes of success story like they do at the CPF conference. This is a house up on Prospect Avenue in the 1700 block, which we had a little issue with, which was the siding. It's in the high fire hazard area. The house had badly damaged siding, and they did exceed the scope of their permit initially by taking the siding off, so we had to do a little backpedaling on this one. But it did come out to a good end. I ended up, what they wanted to do, the fire department wanted them to use synthetic siding, like a hardy board or something, instead of the novelty siding that you see there, which is a major character defining feature of buildings of that age, that wide board siding with the novelty fit. And of course the wooden window surrounds. So what we did is I met with the fire marshal and the building official, and we had some conversation, and we came up with a way of sprinklering the house. The zooming out, if you look at the bottom picture, you see that little bitty round disc right there? That's a sprinkler, and what happens is, in the event of a fire, that pops out, much as the ones do on a roof, and it fogs the house. So it keeps the siding moist enough that, in theory, it should not catch. The reason they're worried about the wood siding up in the hills is that when it does catch fire, it tends to become airborne, particularly the shingles. But in this case, by having that small little disc about every 12 feet spaced around the house, we were able to actually have new siding milled to match the exact specifications of the original. And so the house,
Wow.
with the exception of those little discs, looks like it did when it was built. We were able to save the brackets, the window surrounds, and some of the features of the house that would have been lost had we had to go the other route with the synthetic siding. So that's our little success story for the week.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Very nice to know. Goodness. Are there any other announcements or good news? Seeing none, we'll go to the subcommittee reports. Somewhat inactive.
We had a meeting this morning. You want to report? I got it up. We had a meeting this morning of the designation subcommittee, which was very successful. Do you want to report on just exactly what we did?
We
Go ahead.
looked at the issue of 710 Anacapa Street, and we're going to be coming back to you with a request to designate it as a structure of merit. Now, there was initially an interest in going landmark. However, the owner will not support us landmarking the building, in which case we're going to end up in front of City Council, and we might end up with nothing. You did approve the project, ultimately let's go behind it. And what we're going to do is we're going to have the applicant's going to prepare a preservation plan, which is going to be very detailed in terms of how they can actually remove the 1960s kitchen wing off the back. Remember that caught on fire and it was rebuilt in the 60s. Remove that off the back, actually move the building back on the site, prepare the new foundations, move the building onto the foundations, and what repairs will be necessary to structurally upgrade the building. The reason is that we don't want this to be another one of these preservation projects where all of a sudden it's stripped down to the studs and everything else is new material. We don't want to look alike. We want the original building. And this is that little Carpenter's Gothic house. It's 701. What's it? 701.
710.
Yeah, 701. 710 Anacapa Street. So we're going to proceed with the request of the applicant, and the subcommittee approved bringing it to this full commission as a structure of merit request, with that condition that we do have a very detailed preservation plan and monitoring that will be approved by this commission. We also looked at another house that's up at 603 East Valerio Street, which unfortunately suffered some severe internal fire damage. And it's a very unusual structure. If you can imagine Irving Gill and George Washington Smith getting together in one house, this is probably what you'd come up with. And but the issue is that it's for sale, and the property owner is afraid to allow us to designate it because it may affect, her ability to sell the house. However, there's a couple that's interested in buying it and restoring it, and it really would make an excellent restoration project. And it's got a very unusual construction in that it's all 6-inch redwood structural, and then there's actually clay tile all on the entire 2-story exterior, and then it's stuccoed. It's very unusual construction. We figured the tile was probably put on for maybe sound insulation or to give the house more of a sturdy look. It's got a very stark, very sturdy look to it. I had to do a lot of digging to try and actually determine when the house was built, and I'm still working on some information that we need for the house. But what we're going to be doing with that one is coming forward to you and asking to put it on the potential list as a first step. The reason we want to do that is that will allow us to use the State Historic Building Code, and they'll be able to, the couple, if they buy the house, will be able to restore the house and not have to replace so many of the materials, i.e. the building department would like to see all that hollow tile come off because it's not appropriately affixed to the structure and could be a problem during an earthquake. Of course, the house has survived several major earthquakes as it is, but by having the State Historic Building Code, we can then, when they do the work on the inside, replace the wiring, the plumbing, and whatnot on the inside, and they have the plaster removed, they can then auger into the hollow tiles at certain intervals and wire tie them to the stud so that there's some added protection that the State Historic Building Code would allow that wouldn't be allowed under the current code. So that was another project that you'll be seeing in the next few weeks as a request for putting it on the potential list. And then I will be in contact with the owners if they do go through with the sale to request that they consider structure of merit or landmark designation of the house. Interesting enough, when I found the original owner, the permit says F.L. Wright. I'm thinking, oh yeah, Frank Lloyd Wright. Well, it's actually probably Fermina Louise Wright. We don't know for sure. I got to do a little more digging to try and determine what the specifics on the house are. But architecturally, it's certainly structure of merit, and that was our discussion at that.
Great, thank you.
Oh, we also talked a little bit about the Mills Act and how we want to implement the paperwork and the process. And we're also going to be doing a feature on Inside Santa Barbara on the Mills Act, in which yours truly will be participating and trying to very clearly provide illustration as to what the type of house is and what the conditions are that we're looking for the Mills Act, who should apply, and what type of house would qualify and what wouldn't qualify. And I think that'll help with the visual aids, will really help people to understand where we're going with the Mills Act.
Yeah.
And that was our meeting.
Thank you.
Excuse me, what is the address of the house on, I didn't hear the street.
The Victoria? Oh, it's East Victoria, 601 East Victoria.
Valerio?
Valerio. I keep saying, I got Victoria on the mind today.
601 East Valerio.
East Valerio.
Thank you.
It's very striking. You'll recognize it as soon as you see it.
I'd like to move to the first item, which is an archaeology report for 915 East Anapamu Street.
Yes, Madam Chair, Dr. Glassow reviewed the report and concluded that the archaeological investigation supports the report's conclusions and recommendations that archaeological resources were not likely to be present in the survey property area, but the standard condition regarding the discovery of unanticipated archaeological resources is recommended.
Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I just have one small discussion before we take. On page 10 of the report, there's it lists all of the different landmarks and structures of merit around the property, and
page 10.
Page 10 at the bottom says City of Santa Barbara landmarks, and there's a whole listing of all the different kinds of landmarks and structures. And one of them is there's that retaining wall that retaining the property. This parcel owns half of it on Anapamu, and the other half is owned by the county bowl, and that is eligible for a structure of merit. So I guess I'll just add that to the report, or at least just to say that that's an important part of that property.
I believe when we did the structures report on that,
Was that in there? Okay.
That was in the
That was
report that the
addressed
wall,
in that?
the
Okay.
walls need to be preserved as part of the project.
Okay, great. That's good.
All
That's
those
all.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That motion carries. Next item of business is the Historic Structures Report for 314, 324 State Street. Oops. Get that back down to... Will you Hello. Will you introduce yourself?
Alexandra Cole, preparer of the
Thank you.
report. I just wanted to thank Jake for that fire sprinkler solution. I think that's wonderful.
It's going to be. I think it's going to get used a lot.
Yes, nice work. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
Would you like to make
Are
a
you ready for Steph's
presentation of any
comments, or-
kind? Or would you like to?
Yes, Steph's comments and then.
Yes.
Yeah, this is the Anna Lucia building, and they want to do, as you're well aware, they want to do some work on the parking lot in the back to beautify and upgrade it to a higher standard than it currently is. The main character defining features, as the report points out, the main character defining features of this structure are the State Street facades, and that's where the any protection implementation really needs to be watched. The parking lot and the building they're proposing to remove are not considered to be historically having any historic character defining features for the site, and therefore staff has read the report and agrees with the conclusions and recommendations in the report, and I turn it over to you for your review.
Thank you. And now I'm going to ask if you have a presentation
That
you'd
was
like
very
to make.
quick speaking.
Yes.
Goodness. All right. Thank you. You know, I did have some discussions with the architects. Even though the rear is not considered significant. And we talked about the fact of having those rear doors be wood, just to go along with the wood casement. And they agreed to do that. And then the other one was, if you will look at plate 5, the detail of the rear, if you look at that recessed overhead door, I asked if instead of walling that in, they just leave it and lock it, because it just leads to a trash enclosure. And so they're going to do that. And these are just very minor things, but that I felt that would be a useful thing, even though it's not considered significant, that those would be useful suggestions, and the architect said that would be fine.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this item? Please come up and introduce yourself. Give me the blue paper.
Good afternoon, Kellum DeForest. I just am questioning, it's hard to determine, at least from just glancing, what is any changes proposed for the State Street facade that is included in the address, 316 State Street. Thank you.
Shall I answer?
Yes.
There's going to be no changes to the historic front. Where there will be changes is that piece that is not considered historic at the piece of building that's closest to the freeway. And that there was a photo here of the way it used to look. This is the way it used to look on plate 1, and then you get to plate 6 at the very right, and you will see that in modern times, in the 80s, that whole front was redone in a completely different style. And so that's a part, but none of this historic section
But
with the Moorish arcades will be...
yes, I realize that, but the Seaside gas station and tower, although they were added at a later date than the arcade, certainly are important, and they were done by an important architect. And I know they've been modified, but certainly any modification, I mean, that should be noted, and that isn't I didn't find that in the...
Killam, this is a letter addendum to a much larger
Yes,
report.
I've read
And
the
so,
report.
yes, and so we're talking about the other end. We're talking about the end that's
Oh, you're
closer to
talking
the
about
freeway.
The freeway.
Yeah.
The freeway, and that's not really part of that historic building with the Moorish arches.
Right. And the...
And the end that was redone in a Spanish colonial revival style. That's at the Gutierrez Street end.
Right.
And I'm talking about the piece that is a
Yeah.
separate building
right
at the
next
freeways.
To the, right adjacent
Next to the freeway. Right.
And that is the piece that just was tacked on when they built the freeway.
Mr. Forrest, I think the clarification is
Okay,
can be
thank you.
further pursued properly.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
So we can get out
Are-
before 4?
Are there any questions from the board at all? No? Then I...
Motion to accept the report as presented.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is the Historic Structures Report for 2050 Garden Street.
Okay, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I know when this project first came forward, one of the things that I was a little disappointed in was that they weren't going to be able to use the actual real clay tiles. They were going to use the metal synthetic tiles, and that had to do with the fact that the roof structure really wasn't strong enough to hold the weight. They've since gone back through the process. This report basically evaluates a change to the project which would actually sister in additional rafters into the roof framing system so that we're not losing original material, we're just gaining some material to add strength, and then to use the actual clay tile on the building. And so staff has read the report, agrees with the conclusions and recommendations within the report, and I turn it over to you for your review.
Thank you. Any additional things about this that you want to let us know, or?
Well, there was a discussion since...
Would you introduce yourself
I'm
for the
sorry.
record?
Yes.
And push that little button down there. Thank you.
My name is Bernard Austin with Harrison Design Associates.
Pamela Post, Post Hazeltine Associates, one of the preparers of the report.
Tim Hazeltine, Post Hazeltine Associates.
So my comment was that because there is an existing building permit associated with this project and there's construction ongoing right now, this revision, if you approve the report, it'd be great to get this revision into the building department as quickly as possible.
I'm not sure what you're asking us to do.
Approve the report.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
is that...
Well,
Yes.
what we're going to do,
I see.
Madam Chair, what he's saying is that because there's an actual building permit in progress, they want
Yes.
to feather this together. What they would like to do is, if you approve the report which includes the drawings of what they're going to, specifics of what they're going to do, that staff would okay this to go into the building
I see.
department, right now, so that they can get going on it immediately, rather than waiting 2 more weeks for them to come in and show you the details that basically would be pretty much
I
what you've got in the
see.
report.
Oh. Okay.
Thank you, Jake.
May I ask just for a public comment on this first before we get questions? Is there no public comment? Let's have questions now.
So, the question is, it says revisions to the approved landscaping plan. What exactly is that revision? The garden gate?
The revision is the garden gate, and the sandstone retaining wall, as explained in the letter, had had been enmeshed within a eugenia hedge and some other plantings that had kind of gone wild. And so in terms of their size, and the wall had partially collapsed. They found out once they started removing the vegetation, and so that sort of engendered a discussion of how to install a new retaining wall, yet leave the part of the wall that was still in fair structural condition in place, and still respect the neighbors who didn't want all the vegetation to be removed.
Any further questions? Any comments from the board?
I make a motion to accept the report.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? That motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Want my other copy? Go.
Oh, oh my gosh. Thank you. Wow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I am within 15 minutes of the item number 5. I'm going to call item number 5, 1316 State Street. Will you introduce yourself for the record? And
Certainly.
thank you.
I'm Wally Ronquieto. I'm the owner of Café Buenos Aires and also the partner owner of the real estate.
Huh. Would you like to present your project?
Yeah, well, what we are is trying to provide a windbreaker.
Do you need the photographs, or shall I pass them around?
I think you should pass them around.
Okay.
I've seen them.
Yeah.
So basically, on Arlington Way, there are 3 arches, 1 gate, and then a little gate here on the side. And I'm trying to provide windbreakers here because most of the prevailing winds come down State Street from Upper State down to Lower State. And in some times of the year it gets really windy and flies the glassware that I have on the patio. It tosses the flower vases and so on. So it's a glass breakage and also makes it very unusable. So I'm proposing to have removable windbreakers, but in order to make them look according to the architecture of the main building, they're made look like windows.
Would you like to?
And these are removable, and in the summertime when the weather is nice, or in the winter time when we have these real clear windows that can be removed, days, we can remove them. And then when we have inclement weather, we will install them again. So we are trying to make it look like in Argentina, in Spanish, we call it mamparas, which are glass doors and windows to protect part of the patio.
Would you like to talk about the wrought iron?
Yeah, it's basically going to be wrought iron, and it's going to be custom made for this, of course, because it has to fit the building. It's nothing that you can pre-purchase. And it's going to be done to match the rest of the wrought iron work that exists in the restaurant, as well as to match the wrought iron furniture that we have in the patio. We are going to try to have the same blacksmith that did all the original work to do the same work, so it will be matching the same level of craftsmanship and so on.
Thank you. Do you need to add anything else, or?
No.
All right. I'm going to close the applicant presentation and open to public comment. I do have someone who'd like to speak.
Kellum DeForest. I'm just wondering, instead of cluttering in the State Street and or Equestrian Way with these fancy windows and window shutters, has the applicant thought of using the glass similar to that's used at the Coral Casino and also at the what's it called, the beach, the redone restaurant out there at Henry's Beach. This works very well and is hardly seen and gives the diners a chance to see the passers-by, and that kind of glass partitions, and then they wouldn't have to be opened and closed. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. There's no need for you to reply.
I would like to.
Oh,
Yeah, I certainly would be much easier to go that way. I mean, from the amount of work and cost involved, it would be much easier. I didn't think it would fit with the architecture.
well, frankly, this is public comment, and it's
I
not
see.
really questions
Oh, I see.
from the public. So it's really what the commission thinks.
I see.
So thank you anyway. I'd like questions from the commission.
Yeah, I don't understand the comment. Maybe I'm not familiar with the Park Casino. What do you do with that? Is that a piece of plexiglass in a metal frame, or what is it?
That's what I think he's referring to.
I think what I remember, Commissioner Prujo, is it's thick glass within some metal framing that may go partially up an archway. At least my understanding is the sort of partial glass walls, very, very simple. It's just thick glass.
So it's like an indigo across the street, like it's a modern statement within a historic framework. Is that the concept?
It's a very different building at the Coral Inn.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for the applicant?
Yes, I'm having quite problems trying to figure out exactly how this is going to work. There's going to be the wrought iron, and is the glass in the wrought iron area permanent, and then you're putting panels below it?
It is like, I wish I could explain well at Mampara. It's basically an angle, a wrought iron angle, and there is glass in each pane.
Yes, okay.
Instead of being a single sheet of glass.
Yes, I understand that.
Right.
But, so it works on hinges or something, or?
The mountain we haven't yet totally figured out, but it's going to be ears installed in the stucco, and then there will be holes in the frame, in the metal frame, so it will be shoved in and then not placing on the peg to hold the frame in place. There are some, there will be two in each side and one on top of those like ears or tops that are going to be perforated. So you drive a bolt through it and then tie a knot and hold the whole frame, which holds the glass, of course, in place.
So, how high are they? Are they the entire?
The entire arch.
Arch.
There were other questions, I think, from commissioners.
I'm assuming that everything above the spring line is fixed glass.
It can be
which
removed.
is, I believe, which was Louise's
No,
question.
it will be removed.
These
too.
can be removed
Too.
also?
Yeah, the window, if you want to call it, is going to be like a single frame, and it's going to be removed. This is not going to be left in a permanent basis there.
Would that apply to the door as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we need to have it all the way up for several reasons, especially now with all the fires. All the ashes go into the linen and makes all the linen totally dirty. And we need to replace the linen and so on. So we want to provide a kind of a tight...
Aren't you open to the air above as well?
Yeah, it's open on what we would call the roof or the ceiling.
Yes.
But we have a retractable awning made out of canvas. So when we have the fires, we close the canvas so the basically ashes land on the awning.
I see.
And then when the fire is over, we open the awning and we wash it with a hose to get rid of all the ashes.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for the applicant? Seeing none, I'll take comments. Oh, there is a question? Okay.
Madam Chair. So the existing wrought iron doors will be removed?
Will be removed.
They won't be put back?
No.
Okay. So when will you always have the doors will always be with this new construction?
No.
No.
No, in the summer we'll just leave it open.
They'll be just wide open?
Yeah.
Okay, so no wrought iron?
There's really, in the beginning when we first built the restaurant many years ago, we have in the front gate and the side gate locks to protect the furniture inside and so on, but the fire department prevented us from locking them because they needed fast access to the restaurant. So all those gates have been just kind of for decoration only because anybody can go in anyway.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Schallenberger.
Just for my personal edification, were you the original designer of this building?
No, he's sitting right next to you.
Oh, Alex, okay.
It's just the national relationship.
Thank you.
One question.
Yes.
Sorry. So this is intended to be portable and not up all of the time.
Right.
Would you estimate, is it in the winter that it would be up and not up in the summer, or?
Most likely that's going to be the case. I mean, the windy season is in the late winter, early spring. It's normally around March or so when it gets really windy. What we do right now, we have elastic bands that we put around the tablecloth so it doesn't fly away, but it doesn't really work very well. So anyway, it will be removed as soon as the weather becomes nice. Like right now, for example, in the month of August, it's so nice and there are no winds and so on, so it's beautiful to have the patio totally open. But coming the winter, you get more storms and winds and so on. So yeah, it will be placed on when needed. We will restore it. We have a service alley in towards where the Washington Mutual Bank is. We will store all that there, and then when we see the store coming, put it up.
So it would really be seasonal then,
Right.
not year-round, and I assume it would be fairly much trouble to take them in and out frequently anyway.
We are
it would be an effort
trying
to do
to
that.
make it, as I said, it will be 5 bolts per arch to hold the structure in place. So it shouldn't take much work to put them in or out. We're going to try to keep it as lightweight as possible by using a tempered glass that is not very thick. We thought about acrylic or plexiglass, but it scratches it and it doesn't allow you to clean it, so we have to go with glass.
May I ask why you're showing awnings on this
Oh,
elevation?
this
and
was a
not
previous project that never got erased. At one point we were asking to have awnings on top of the...
Yes, I remember.
But it's a leftover.
Okay. Thank you. Any further comments or questions?
Again, for my edification, as I'm recalling, Cafe Buenos Aires, the elevation along State Street has far fewer openings.
It's totally open.
It's totally open like this?
Well, let me see. We have a...
No, I think it's got less. I'm just thinking about there's less opening. There's the entrance.
This is only just a low wall.
Yeah.
Right.
Here is a low wall there, and then there is a gate here, and then there is a low wall in this area here, and then there are these 3 openings.
He's not doing anything on the front, on the State
Nothing.
Street
We're
elevation.
not touching
No,
the
I know
front
that.
at all.
Oh, okay.
But what I'm suggesting, what about the south-facing wall? I think that's Washington Mutual. All I'm getting at is that at some point our big storms are from the southeast, and it might be. I mean, the really big ones don't come from the west; they come from the southeast, and that's where the protection should be. Also, I'm assuming that if this is successfully pursued, that you might want to do the same thing.
So far, the effect from, as I said, from the north side is so much more overwhelming than anything we else have noticed. So I think that will provide enough protection, but maybe...
I mean, we haven't had rain for some years, so when we do, eventually, hopefully, well...
So at this point, I'm not asking for it. I think that with this protection might be enough. So, but if we may find that that's not, then I may see you again next year.
Thank you.
I do have another question.
Yes.
Where you put these wrought iron assemblies with glass, are they in the middle of the archway, or are they on the inside edge? How
They are
far
going
do you?
Yeah,
are
it's
you
going
gonna
to be
put them?
about, I would say, probably 8 inches.
So about 8 inches in, so that's approaching the middle of each
Right.
column.
It's less than the middle. Right now we have here some rails.
Wrought
We're gonna
iron
use
railings.
The same, yeah, but the wrought iron rails. We're going to use the same location where those are, so we can use that tie-in points.
I see. Got it.
You're shown here, about in the center of the plan. Is that
Right.
correct?
It's hard to represent the exact distance, but this is where the existing rail is installed. So we use the places where they are already connected to the wall as connection points for these windows.
Any further questions? Seeing none, let's have comments, please. Yep.
So I'll limit just the comments just to the concept itself, just because I think we can't really do too much until the details are known, especially the relationship of the plaster to the frame itself, and if there's any kind of gap and that type of thing. I mean, obviously that's the more traditional way where plaster would die into the wrought iron frame itself, and I know you know all this, but generally I can support the concept, and the material choice is certainly appropriate and within the guidelines. So I think I just need to see more detailing. Some of those dimensions that you just mentioned about how far back it's set into the opening itself, and especially the connection details and just how it relates to the existing building. I'm a little concerned about, I don't really think we should even consider that they're removable, because we don't have any way of controlling whether they get removed or not at any given time. It's only what do they look like when they're in place that we should really even consider, because removing them or not is not really the issue. They're not going to be easy to remove. These are going to weigh a substantial amount, especially the door with the arch above the door opening. That'll be pretty heavy, but that's your means and methods, so I don't have any real comment on that. I guess my comment is I'll hold comments until I see details.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments?
I'll chime in.
Thank you.
Only claiming partial credit on this. I mean, credit is due to Silvia Ronquieto, who really made the conceptual design of this. I want to clarify for the record that I'm only partially responsible, or proudly partially responsible of this project. I share my colleagues' concerns and ideas. I think when we saw this about a year ago or so, I think we made some comments along those lines, that some kind of enclosure is supportable, but at that time I forgot what it was. It was perhaps heavier, perhaps more wood-based, and I think we gave the applicant a direction more or less along those lines. I think we're thinking more in terms of all open gateways that will all open up. I think there's some practical difficulties that need to be resolved. They're not easy, including the capital trim and the way the windows engage the capital. I'm familiar with the building. I think the building could lose those capitals, but they would have to be throughout through the whole thing. And still, considering that they're made with foam and not very well built, I mean, that would be one proposal, one idea. I shall see a conflict with the way the windows are engaged with the columns and those the way they're working. They're just not working right now. I agree with the comment on the permanent installation. I think that we should look at it as if it was permanent, because it will most likely will remain permanent. I could support something that is made as a what's it called, a window corporation, the metal frames, the steel frames, the heavy steel frame, or it could be custom made, but it would be like a very small profile steel framework for the especially for the arches. and maybe the lunettes are fixed, and maybe the windows are removable or whatever. But I think it all depends. I agree with Schallenberg that this becomes an issue of detail, how it's done.
Thank you. Other comments?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I don't know. I see the need for this, but I wouldn't mind if you just, dealt with the lower half and didn't try to close off the tops of the columns. It's just an idea that I'm thinking about, but it might just, have some fresh air in there, but not complicate the tops of the archways, and maybe do something below the capitals of the columns. It's just a thought.
Thank you.
I'm just not in favor of this solution, because the problem for me is the way this architecture worked. They were meant to be open, and so if you take out, for like they were suggesting, if you take this out, then you lose that whole sense of this coping. And in other words, this was all done this way, and to change it, it will, I think, will really bring a lot of attention to these windows that are really not the sort of the character-defining part of this building. And because it's right across from the Arlington, I really worry about precedents that are not in keeping with the spirit of guidelines and why this building was approved and built the way it is. So I would certainly look for different solutions. It'd probably be good to look around the town and see various solutions of this sort and figure out a way to do something. Maybe not all of the windows, but we try to do the same thing. We try to enclose the Unitarian Church. There was those arches, and we said no, and they were going to do the same thing, with the whole glass, the whole thing, because they wanted space. And I really do sympathize with your weather. It's just that I just think the solution will really change this whole character of this whole building. It will also set a precedent that is, this is our permanent, not permanent. Obviously they're going to have to be permanent. And I just think it will really have a big impact on this corner, and so I just can't support it. But I am open to see, other commissioners, maybe majority, want to see your details and see how it works and see how maybe a sample of one and how it will look. But at this point, I just can't support it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Sharp?
Madam Chair, I think Commissioner Adams hit the nail on the head when he said that the solution should probably be something below the Capitol and not try and enclose the upper part. With the roof open, even with canvas, and it's not rain tight and certainly not airtight, you're not going to do a whole lot more by enclosing the upper half. And I think that to me, expressing the 20-inch thickness of the existing arches, which is very nice, and you'd be cutting all that down. I tend to agree it does have some semblance of being permanent, and I think you'd have much more flexibility, a lot less construction cost if you were to come up with some way of merely closing the lower half like most restaurants seem to be happy doing. You don't see windscreens going above 4, 5, 6 feet at the very most in most situations. So with the opening in the roof already, I think that would go a long way to solving your problem. Certainly it would aesthetically and architecturally.
Thank you. Mr. Curtis?
I agree with Commissioner Adams and Sharp in that regard, and also Commissioner Schellenberger earlier in his statement that the proposed solution as it's submitted to us today would really have to be treated as a permanent installation rather than one that could be taken in and out with relatively ease. And I share for Mina's, Commissioner Murray's concern that it's not consistent with the original style of the architecture. I'm totally sympathetic to your need to have some wind protection there, and I would prefer a solution, I think, that would, again, be a more portable, temporary type solution below the Capitol, but one that could be easily put up and taken away, not necessarily just seasonally, but maybe dependent upon weather even.
Thank you. Commissioner Boucher?
Yeah, I would support the idea of just putting it in the lower portion of the opening. Otherwise, I think it's been said pretty thoroughly, but details need to be brought in.
Thank you.
And that is, really the tops of these archways are really most beautiful. They add so much to the streetscape. It's an amazing courtyard. I've spent so much time there enjoying it and being proud of that particular space. And I think that the top of these arches are just exquisite. I wouldn't change them.
Thank you. Yes. Yes.
Looking at these, because I have not yet.
Yes, I'm sorry.
And it will be short. The difference between the top drawing as it exists and the bottom drawing is one of, I think, excessive busyness. The top drawing is really simple, as you were talking about the beauty of the arches and the wrought iron. And I think that the idea, I will thoroughly support the idea of just having a removable windscreen below the capitals. I think it's a very elegant idea and much more simple and perhaps less costly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll summarize the comments. The majority of the Commission supports the concept of a partial enclosure on Arlington Way of the courtyard. The majority of those also believe that you might pursue a solution that only encloses below the spring line of the capitals of the arch. There have been suggestions regarding the fact that you might consider this to be permanent, because that's the way we think it's going to wind up, but there are also suggestions that the preference would be for temporary, so you've heard the range of opinions. We do have one commissioner who feels very strongly that it will set a precedent and is incompatible with the architecture of the building to enclose these arches. May I have a motion?
Can I make a comment?
If it's all right. Normally, I would prefer not to have a dialogue back and forth. If you wish clarification of the motion.
Basically, what I'm trying to do here is to remain in business. All restaurants in town are failing weekly. Acapulco failed, Paseo failed, everybody is going out of business. I need to cut down my operating expenses. If I have to change linen when I have a fire 3 times or 4 times, even if they have not been used, my linen bill runs for $4,700 a month. So you have an idea of what we're talking about. So I'm trying to cut in operating expenses and remain viable as a business. And this will help me greatly because it will reduce the breakage of glassware, flower vases. No need to change the cushions on all the chairs because the chairs, they are all cushions that are yellow in color. When all the ashes come in, I have to wash all the cushions. I have 132 cushions out in the patio. I have 68 tables with 4 napkins each. That's about 240 napkins, plus a tablecloth. And I have to change them all whenever I get ashes and wind that brings dirt and so on. So I know that how important it is to be architecturally pleasant and so on, but if I'm going to go out of business, this might be converted in who knows what. So
Well, Mr. Anchietto, I really don't want this to be a dialogue, but if you understood my comments, the majority of the commission thinks you can enclose as you wish. It's just not the way you're showing it.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to continue this for 2 weeks.
Will you be able to come back in 2 weeks with a revised?
I hope so. If I don't, should I advise
That's
you?
great. You can just give me a call.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
With the comments made by the chair.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? That motion carries.
Okay. Thank you.
We hope we won't have any more ashes, okay?
Yeah.
I think we've all had it.
Well,
Many years.
Doing almost weekly in the last.
I know.
Oh, it's been awful.
Getting one after another after another.
We've all suffered.
Last week we had one.
I think we only need one, and so, Mr. Anchietto,
We did.
that's yours.
The white
mine?
We just need one. We need to keep one. We need to
Oh,
keep
I
one, so
see.
those are yours.
They're yours.
They're yours.
I
Right.
can't believe it.
Thank you.
Okay.
It was all covered with black soot. And
The last item of business is item number 6, 914 Chapala Street. Oops. Forgot to give you this. Ooh.
well, I'm certainly
gosh.
sympathetic, and I know business is difficult right now, but
I truly think a cheaper, simpler, portable solution would be
Oh,
the best
really?
thing.
Does Susan know?
All right. That goes up in the wrought iron.
ponytail.
It'll never come
What
down.
happened?
It will be there forever.
What happened?
and the basic architect experts, and to put all that ego in there.
I will tell you truthfully, we've got a new president. It was supposed to come out on
It
January
just
30th.
seems not to be true to the architecture.
New drawings,
With the
just-
open
I think you know.
roof and
Okay.
with that kind of detail.
Okay.
January 20th, I should say.
You're back.
Inauguration day.
Yes. Oh, good to see you guys again.
Just love it here.
I told my husband I'd be home by 2:30. What's wrong?
We want to focus on this block of pictures first.
I'm going to just remind the commissioners to turn off your microphones when you're not speaking publicly. And then I'm going to ask the applicant to please introduce themselves for the record.
Victor Garza, Parking Superintendent for the city.
Thank you.
Jessica Grant, Project Planner for the city.
Thank you.
Bob Cunningham, Landscape Architect.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, we're here to present the latest drawings, hoping to get final design approval of the landscaping for our project at parking lot number 2, the Nordstrom's parking lot. If you might all recall, a couple of years ago, staff discovered some actually significant damage to the decorative arcades. There were 5 of them that surrounded the parking garage. We were directed to remove them by the building department to protect the public. But in order to do that, we had to come for approval from the HLC because we weren't just going to take them down and leave them. Our original concept was to come back with substituting landscaping in place of replacing the arcades as they were, mainly because we thought that it would look better, but also because it would because we could do it with the funds that we have available in our capital program. So a couple of months ago, we hired a contractor. We obtained approval from the HLC to remove the arcades on the condition that we come back with a design that would be approvable, that we could place in lieu of replacing the decorative arches and doing some other significant architectural changes. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Bob Cunningham, our landscape architect, that is going to go over the details of what we're proposing.
Oh, and if I might interrupt, there are some commissioners who, as I do, need some refreshing of their memory, and for those who did not review this, they may want to know what the commissioners said. Before it got to this point, the commission comments at the time were The demolition permit is for the structurally compromised arcades. At the November 14, 2007 meeting, the Commission made the following comments, which were included in the motion. The landscaping plan was good, but the architecture was not, and the HLC requested more architectural solutions to improve this problem. Secondly, it was suggested that instead of spending money on the removal and reconstruction of the arcades, the money should be spent in other architectural enhancements. Third, provide balcony details. Fourth, simplify the painting details. 5, keep the level of the lighting and the fixtures as low as possible. And the motion was final approval of the demolition permit with the condition that a revised scheme shall be resubmitted within 6 months that complies with the city lighting and architectural standards in EPV Landmark District.
Okay. If you can focus on this block of 8 photographs, and I believe you've got some others to pass around.
Oh,
that's great.
This is old ones.
Essentially, this is the condition of the building as it is now, with the arcades removed and the landscaping that remains in the photographs. So, essentially, as Victor stated, we kind of feel like we can accomplish what we're trying to achieve without adding much in the way of architectural features, but sticking with the original landscape concept that we had. So I can walk you through what you see here in the SketchUp drawings. This is the facade that faces the backside of the Canary Hotel. So at the interior corner of the Paseo, which would be the northwest corner of the building itself, we've got an empty planter, and in that planter we want to put a Mediterranean fan palm. It's a very drought tolerant species, shade tolerant as well. We have an existing cork oak that will remain. We've got an existing jacaranda that will remain. And no, actually, I'm sorry. This is the existing jacaranda. Anyway, we're basically replacing very little in terms of the ground plane. We are supplementing the existing trees along this stretch with several new sweet shade trees, jacarandas. We've got 2 new jacarandas here, and 2 Senegal date palms. And then on the ground plane, we're in order to keep the essence of what we have had ever since the building was constructed. The intent is to shift around some of the boxwood hedges and the daylilies and the birds of paradise into configurations that make sense according to the original design, and add some new plants where we need to fill in the gaps. We've also got several small Scheffleras that are about, at this point, I would say 6 to 8 feet tall along this side. The intent with those is to leave them in place. The intent with most of the birds of paradise is to leave them in place. We don't really want to remove any plants. We do want, well, except for a couple of problem trees, we want to transplant where we can and fill in the blanks where we need to. As Victor says, maybe not primarily, but with a great deal of emphasis on saving money in doing this in a way that's not throwing away everything that's there and starting over, but supplementing what's there and building on it. We've worked with water resources in terms of making this a water-wise landscape. Some of the plants that we originally had on the plan that was, I think, given at least a preliminary wink of approval, such as the tree ferns and a couple of other species, we've gotten rid of in favor of some plants that are more drought tolerant, like the Senegal date palms. The Senegal date palms, in fact, replace giant birds of paradise. So along this facade, essentially, we've got
3 existing trees. The rest of what you see here is new, above about this level. On the corner, right over here, this cork oak has never performed well. It's stunted, and it's about a quarter the size of the other one. So we're proposing to remove that and replace it with a new tree. And then over on this elevation, this jacaranda has never rooted properly. It's leaning at about an angle like that. So the proposal is to remove that and replace. This is where the new cork oak would go. And the rest of this landscaping is essentially as is, but as I said, supplemented. We'll be putting 2 bronze loquats in a pair of empty pots that we've got for this location. On the wall, or the elevation of the building that faces Canon Perdido Street, in the alley between the, I guess, 1970s building, the wooden building, and the parking structure, we had an arcade along here. We also have an existing Eucalyptus citriodora. At this point, the eucalyptus is in a very narrow planter, has displaced an irrigation valve box by at least 6 inches and will continue to do so. So we'd like to take that out and replace with 3 firewheel trees along that side. We will also replace the boxwood hedge with a ligustrum hedge. We've got ligustrum along here. It will match better with this, and it'll be a tougher and more drought-tolerant plant. Here's an angled view of it from Chapala Street. This is seen from this angle here. The next sheet is photographs of the plants that we propose to use. Essentially, almost everything here is currently in place. There are a couple of spots where we're adding new plants that will substantially depart from what we have currently at this location, which is the sidewalk end of the Paseo at Chapala Street. We've got some pittosporum and bougainvillea that's been hedged and is really not the most attractive. We'd like to replace that with tree aloe and a Dianella masked perennial ground cover, which is this right here. This is it's a new plant on the market. It's very drought tolerant, can survive without water once it's established, and we'll be putting that in as a ground cover pretty much throughout, probably 60% of the area, but in particular it'll be around the tree aloe here. These 3 plants are king palms, which are existing. So in terms of what's new on this plan, this jacaranda tree, a new sweet shade tree, the Senegal date palms, 4 new sweet shades here, another new jacaranda here, a new oak, and a new jacaranda here. The rest of this is mostly ground level 6 feet and below landscaping that exists. And then over here we've got the Stenocarpus firewheel trees. The downtown parking crews are going to go through, when they do this landscaping, and install a drip irrigation system throughout. We pretty much established that this is, even though it may not technically be a low water using landscape, what's there now has been in the ground for 20 years, and for probably the past 10 years has not been irrigated. So we felt that we could use the existing plants, add a drip irrigation system to provide for the new plants, and have a very drought tolerant landscape. This is the corner where the is it? I think this might be the corner where that bougainvillea is pruned into a big box. This is the cork oak that we want to remove. This is the jacaranda that we want to remove, and this is the eucalyptus that'll come out. That's essentially it, Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay. Are there any comments from the public regarding this? Seeing none, I'll take questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
You mentioned one of the cork oaks is to be removed and replaced. Is it replaced with another cork oak or
Yes.
another oak species?
It'll be another cork oak. We want to. There's one on each side of the corner, so we felt that symmetry was important to retain. And there are also at least 2 more cork oaks in the Paseo that this relates to.
Back on the first elevation that showed the entire length there are several appear to be trees that have kind of an angular profile. Are those existing, and what are
These?
Yes.
Those are sweet shade trees. There is one existing now at the far end, and I believe there were others. A couple of them had to be removed during the demolition, but it's a narrow tree. It works very well in this situation. It's fragrant, so we felt it would be appropriate to return it to the site.
So those are being replaced then with new plantings?
Yeah. This is probably a 10-year down the road view of what you'll have. There is an issue. Since this is all being done by city crews, and the desire is to not use big equipment, the maximum size of the plants that we're installing is 24-inch box, which can be manhandled by 3 or 4 guys into, over these walls and into the planters. Larger material would incur greater expense and also just the need for equipment.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah. So at this point, there's nothing happening to the building itself. Is that correct? I mean, none of the things that were read have been dealt with.
Well, there was provide balcony details, add architectural enhancements, simplify the painting details,
Those
and
are
lighting
all
fixtures.
been done, or you're not doing it, or
What we're proposing is that the commission look at the idea of using the landscaping instead of doing that work. When we did the demolition, we did spruce up a couple of areas where there were some moldings that needed to be placed. We were quite surprised when the arcades were removed. First of all, how much of a more open feeling we had in the Paseo, and actually how we thought the building it looked good. And so we felt that with adding this landscaping with Bob's ideas that we could avoid. Well, we're also thinking that we could possibly do the architectural work, and then it would be hidden by the landscaping. So it didn't seem like there was much point to doing
the
that.
lighting and
But yeah, the lighting we are going to be addressing. We do have a project in the works to replace all of the lighting inside the garage with fluorescent lighting, which is going to be better inside, and on the outside we're going to be putting in a couple more of the high pressure sodium lighting. We've worked with ex-member Steve House on that.
Question: the two-tone pink color and all that. What's your consideration on the paint colors? Have you explored that option of just cleaning up the paint color idea?
We agree with the commission on that's not the best paint scheme. We're looking at the next time we do a repainting to have a more solid color paint scheme, because I believe that was the commission's concern, was that the pink wainscoting was not desirable.
Okay. And then one more question. I didn't quite get this when you pointed it out. It's the first thing you did. But the Mediterranean palm, what kind of palm is that?
Camarilla similis.
Oh, okay.
This, you've got an old set, Robert.
Yeah, maybe
it's over here. This is the demolition plan, which is showing the trees.
Got it.
Removing the next sheet. It's right here.
Very good. Okay, thank
what
you.
you had previously was a pair of pygmy date palms.
I see. Got it. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, what will replace the eucalyptus?
Just the 3 fire whale trees.
And are there any other eucalyptus to remove?
To remain?
Are there any other eucalypti? No?
No, we're not removing, let's see, we've got 4 eucalyptus in these planters, 2 here and 2 here, and then this is the one we want to remove. These all 4 will remain, and the fire whale trees will go in here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? I'll take comments. Go ahead, Mr. Kirk.
I support the new approach, I think. I like the idea of keeping the building facade simple and not adding artificial decorative details to the facade and accomplishing some interest with the landscaping. Although I'm not a great fan of cork oaks, I can see replacing one that, at least not in that kind of setting, but I can see replacing the one that is being removed with a like species there. And in general, I like the palette of plants that is proposed. I do agree that when it's painted in the future that keeping the painting scheme a little simpler also would be desirable.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I love cork oaks. Can we still be friends?
I guess so.
Is that your only comment? Would you like to, are you in support of the landscape-only scheme?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say I appreciate the fact that Commissioner Boucher loves cork oaks. Cork oaks have been a sensitive subject with me for some time. I love them. Maybe too much.
Okay.
Anyway, I think this is great. I appreciate the landscape architect working out some of the water iffy plants. I love the Mediterranean fan palm. There is a blue kind too. You can always use as an accent, from Morocco. Just to consider that. But I do like the plant palette. I actually think that the paint color, of course, the applicant agrees with us that should be simplified when it is time to paint. Maybe, I don't know if that can be a condition or whatever, but basically I think they're turning this into a garden, and it'll be enhanced and work out terrifically considering the original structure you're dealing with. So I think this is really a good scheme, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the Dianella does over time. Mm-hmm. So it's good to experiment sometimes with new drought-tolerant species.
Thank you. Commissioner Sharp?
I love Eucalyptus citriodora, so I was wondering if you'd given any thought to leaving it in for a couple of years until the other landscaping fills in and you're not barren the building all at one time.
May I respond? I think that would make some sense, provided that the irrigation infrastructure that it's threatening now isn't destroyed. And I think that staff's going to have to take a look at that and see just what the conditions are.
We could do that.
You know, that they're going to use as much of the infrastructure as possible when they do the drip irrigation system. If that particular valve can be abandoned and capped and
or moved.
Removed and the tree could remain for a little while longer, sure. But, you know, the tree is in a planter that's this wide, and, you know, the tree gets this wide. So, but we'll certainly take that into consideration.
And in tandem with that, had you thought about staging any of this?
I think it probably will be staged because it'll be a matter of workforce availability and budgeting, and I don't think they intend to go through and do it all, you know, in a 2-week period or even a 1-month period.
Well, the more it's drawn out within reason, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
They do have a lot of shifting around to do, so stuff that needs to be transplanted might need to be done in one operation, and then they'll go back and fill in after that.
Just sure? Yes.
I also like the citriodora.
Okay.
Time you can use one.
Are you in favor of landscape only as a solution?
I don't think we have a choice, but probably.
Okay.
That was exactly what I was going to say. I don't think we have a choice.
Ms. Murray?
Yeah.
And you're in favor of this, okay. Mr. Peugeot? In agreement, yes. Commissioner Drury? All right, I will remain a slightly dissenting voice. I am disturbed by the concept that this building was approved by a previous commission, of which I was not part of, and those arcades were part of the approval. And the concept of a building having a part of it removed and not replaced due to whatever the problem was, and then masking it with landscape is disturbing to me because I don't believe that it's a permanent solution. So I will be in dissent with this. I understand the city has no funds. I understand this is an expedient solution, but it's not in the Commission's interest to be expedient, in my opinion. So I will summarize the comments, and that is the majority of the Commission likes the palette that has been proposed and the solution that is being proposed in terms of additional trees and removal of trees. And I'll wait for a motion.
So paint color would be part of that as well.
We would encourage you to...
Excuse me, that's not part of the project
Right.
description,
It's
though,
not
so
part of
that's
it.
not
Yeah. It won't. Right.
something you should
Okay.
comment on.
I make a motion to approve the project as submitted.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
With a comment on the $6 tree.
I'm sorry.
Okay. And I oppose. Thank you.
What's the comment on the Citradora?
To prolong
Leave it
the
in for a
removal
while.
as long as possible, while the other plant material grows to some maturity, and to adjust the irrigation location if needed. The valve box.
Thank you.
I think I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, we're adjourned.